Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like tonight's film, 1980's Forbidden Zone. 1980's Forbidden Zone, and this is directed by Richard Elfman, Danny Elfman's brother, and this is from 1980. This is put out by MVD Visual at their plant is in Pennsylvania. Suburban Pennsylvania somewhere, and they put out, I got the Ultimate Edition, including the soundtrack by Danny Elfman, of all people there, and this is the back, and it says in the back, the Citizen Kane of underground movies. You know, I've heard about Forbidden Zone for a very long time, and a lot of people who said that I was into cult films and underground bizarre cinema said, "You haven't seen Forbidden Zone yet?" And I said, "Oh no, I haven't, but I've definitely heard of it. It's definitely on my radar. It's definitely on my list." Well, now I'm going to talk about it. 1980's Forbidden Zone. So Richard Elfman, of course, the brother of Danny Elfman, who would go on to do Oingo Boingo and go on to do the scores for countless Tim Burton films to the present day, you know, to Dark Shadows and things like that. So let's look at this wild, insane film. I have some notes here, so you'll see my eyes divert, written on the wall, a chalkboard here. So let's get into Forbidden Zone. When you think you have seen it all, you are wrong. We have a hole, a portal of sorts, to another dimension, another world, captivity and chaos and music and dancing and frog heads and midgets and boobs and homemade sets and humping. And you know what? When you watch this movie, you have truly entered into this new dimension. Living in a new dimension. I think of that song. I think that's what they're saying there as Danny Elfman sings that. John Waters, David Lynch, Tim Burton, a traveling troupe of experimentalism and all that is boundary breaking and avant-garde. You know, it reminds me of John Waters. It reminds me of David Lynch kind of colliding, mixed with something else. Something else. The music in this film. Let's start with the music. The music in Forbidden Zone. We have Danny Elfman's first music, in a way. You know, before Oingo Boingo, and the name Oingo Boingo for his band actually came from the world of this film. The, I believe, French traveling troupe that made this, that kind of, this film evolved out of. It sounds like Oingo Boingo at times. And you, like I said, look for that name in the film. It's bouncy, it's weird, it's old-fashioned. It almost reminds me of the 20s and the 30s a little bit. There is some seriously old music, like an old music vibe to this film. It's showy, it's crazy. This is a musical in many regards, but do not expect it to play out in the ways that you're accustomed to. Is it weird talking, or is it singing? Is that music just playing for me as the viewer, or is it something else happening where the actors are hearing it too, and will break out in something deranged and weird? The music in here is very complex. I mean, you could call it a musical, but is it really a musical? Is this musical operating in another dimension almost? It's musical done different, for lack of a better word. It's musical done psychedelically avant-garde and breaking the fourth walls in maybe in some way. We have homemade obvious sets in this film that were done by Richard Elfman's wife, supposedly all through the night, and then they would film the next day. Homemade obvious sets that really set a tone. A black and white in the original version, but you can get the colored version on here as well, which supposedly is Richard Elfman's preferred version, interestingly enough. Shifty, weird, stop motion edits. Animation. You know, it reminded me of some of the animation in some ways. Didn't remind me of it, but the way animation was used in a film that I reviewed in this YouTube page called Nocturna some moons ago. You can find the review on here last year. There's animation here. It's wild. It's weird. It comes out of nowhere, but yet it meshes with what the film is and makes the film what it is. There's a cultural diversity in this cast. There are, cultural and racial stereotypes. There's wild sexuality, costumes, masks, and mixing that with the homemade sets is really unique. Makeup, old people playing younger people, fat women, a Jewish man, white slavery, human chandeliers, nipples everywhere, including one attractive female character who has them out all of the time. And she really wasn't in many other films, interestingly enough. This film is another dimension. There is nothing like it that I have seen. I got to be honest with you, and I know that's saying a lot. It's fascinating and wonderful and shocking and hilarious and wild and rebellious, yet innocent and dark and very, very profoundly bizarre. There's an element in this film of overacting that could almost remind you of some of the characters or the people in a John Waters film. But remember, right when you think that you have it figured out, you don't. And that's what makes it truly bizarre. There are classroom sequences in this film that are so weird and amazing. Yes, like a school classroom sequence. And very ahead of its time. I don't want to give anything away with what happens in the classroom. We have some characters in this film with their makeup, with their masks, whatever, with the homemade elements of it all that are so profoundly disturbing in just the way that they look, like the teacher in the classroom. So weird. I mean, really, like you're on an alien planet. It pushes all the right buttons of weird, all the right buttons of confusion and chaos, and I feel uneasy about this person. You know what I'm saying? The animation and the music create other sections of atmosphere throughout the film that aid in a hyper wildness where your senses are constantly being assaulted in this film. Definitely. There is constant stimuli in this film for your eyes and your ears. There's even writing on the screen. It's fun, yet it's a nightmare, yet it's an adventure, yet it's trippy, yet it's surreal, yet it's shocking, yet it's sexy, yet abrasive, yet innocent. You know from the first couple minutes of this film that you are getting involved in something crazy. And at first, you might be really off-put, possibly, in the first 5 minutes, and kind of pushed away. Something's pushing you away, but something is pulling you in at the same time. If you're not a fan of musicals, that doesn't matter. You could still love this film. If you're a fan of musicals, you might not gravitate to this film because it might not seem totally like a musical to you. It really feels born out of avant-garde experimental theater and creativity. I mean, it's 1980, and it almost felt older to me in some bizarre... Like, it feels like it was made by some bizarre underground cult of wild maniacs. And with the crazy acting and the crazy relationships and the crazy situations, this is a film that really wants you to feel out of place. Like you are in another world, another dimension. Music, visuals, craziness. It's a film that shows you the beauty of something almost looking low budget and how that homemade look and feel can actually aid in what the film can be. This is Forbidden Zone by Richard Elfman. They call it the Citizen Kane of underground movies. And the music is by Danny Elfman with the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. I think that was the original name there, before it was just Oingo Boingo. Folks, 1980, Forbidden Zone. What a wild, weird, nightmare, fun, innocent vibe. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Forbidden Zone from 1980. If you haven't seen this film yet, I'm telling you, you haven't seen it all yet until you've seen this film. It is definitely chaos, theater, experimental art. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.